Fighting back would only use up their power faster, leading to certain death. She could feel her own spiritual energy was almost gone, and without it, she knew she would soon be another victim. As she collapsed to the floor, her strength gone, she despaired at the terrifying intelligence of a creature that was just playing with them. She closed her eyes, wondering if this was the end. Lying defeated on the factory floor, Su Qingying saw a single ray of light cut through the green darkness above. A flicker of hope appeared in her eyes. Suddenly, the factory ceiling exploded inward, and a blinding light filled the room. Her eyes widened as a figure came down from the blast. It was Fang Yi. He landed gracefully in the rubble, his hooded figure standing out against the glowing hole in the ceiling. He stood before the giant serpent, immediately identifying it as a dark attribute creature. Without warning, the serpent lunged, its massive fangs aimed at him. At the same time, the Candle Knight monster burst from the shadows, attacking from behind. Fang Yi dodged the serpent's attack and came face to face with the growling rat-like beast. As the two creatures closed in, he finally understood the full trap he had walked into. In a shocking move, Fang Yi let the Candle Knight monster bite his shoulder. As blood splattered, he noted their surprisingly smart tactics, one creature for luring prey, the other for killing them. He taunted the beast latched onto him, asking if it enjoyed biting people so much. In response, he unleashed his new power. Bright blue lightning erupted from his body as he challenged the monster to taste his thunder property. At the same time, he fired a massive beam of golden solar energy from his free hand, which hit the lunging serpent head-on. Now, covered in crackling electricity and free from the stunned rat creature, Fang Yi turned his full attention to the serpent, unleashing a flood of golden flames as he challenged it to see how well it could handle fire. The giant serpent lunged with a furious roar, its huge mouth open to eat its prey. With amazing agility, Fang Yi dodged the attack, flipping through the air while swinging his glowing golden sword. As he landed, he coolly told the monster to look at his blade, a clear challenge to the giant beast. The serpent seemed to pull back, cautious of the glowing weapon. Seeing his chance, Fang Yi counterattacked. Leaping through the air, he delivered a powerful slash to the serpent's face, his sword covered in the crackling blue energy of his thunder power. The force of the blow was huge, but the result wasn't what he expected. Instead of crushing its skull, the creature's head split down the middle, revealing a second identical head underneath as if it were shedding its skin. Fang Yi landed on his feet, his eyes wide with surprise at this strange development. The creature's split head then pulled apart completely, shedding its outer layer to reveal its true, healed form. As green energy pulsed in its neck, Fang Yi knew the fight was far from over. The serpent reacted with shock and pain as the leftover thunder energy from Fang Yi's sword ran through its body. It roared in fury as the electrical energy grew stronger, overwhelming its dark power. Watching the creature twist in pain, Fang Yi gave a small, confident smirk. He knew he had the advantage, as he had already sensed this serpent's dark aura was stronger than Candle Knight's. He then revealed his clever plan. When he attacked with his sword, he had held back the full force of his fire. Instead, he had used the blade to carry and channel the thunder power from his hand directly into the snake's body. He compared the two creatures, realizing this serpent was a far more dangerous and evolved monster than Candle Knight. Suddenly, he felt a sharp pain in his shoulder where the rat creature had bitten him. He hissed, looking down to see strange purple snake scales growing from the wound. He understood immediately. Just as he'd thought, this was a smart, mutated species. Its poison, delivered by its partner's bite, had a paralyzing effect that let it kill silently. He could feel a sharp pain from the wound, but he also felt his Golden Sun breathing technique working to fight the venom. With a determined look, he knew he had the perfect counter. The Yang Flame power could dissolve the poison, the Golden Sun technique would protect and heal his body, and the Thunder power would purify anything left. As the energy from his powers pulsed through him, Fang Yi recognized the benefit of his combined abilities. The mix of his Yang Flame and Thunder powers now gave him a clear pain signal to any poison, acting as an early warning system. He knew he was lucky. For others, the serpent's sneaky poison would have been impossible to cure. He guessed that for the serpent to have grown so large, it must have relied on surprise attacks. He thought of the monster's den, filled with the skulls of its victims. With Candle Knight acting as the perfect bait, the two creatures had become a deadly trap even for top pioneers, which explained why so many had disappeared. But in the end, it didn't matter. As he watched the creature's huge skeleton burn to ash in his holy fire, he knew its reign of terror was over. Standing before the fire, Fang Yi felt satisfied. His inner flame was powerful, but the triple critical hit from his new thunder power had sealed his victory. He felt confident that his fighting skills were now pretty good, even compared to other high-level pioneers. He stood silently for a moment, watching the flames burn the last of the monster. Just as he was about to leave, he paused, reaching out his hand as if he sensed something. His eyes narrowed. He wasn't alone. Someone was still there. He turned just in time to see a figure stumbling out from the smoke, coughing from the ash. It was Su Qingying. She stood silently, covered in soot and clearly tired, but she was alive. As the smoke cleared, Fang Yi found himself looking at the unconscious members of the other squad, with Su Qingying sitting among them. He recognized her as the agent from the association and coolly told her that there was no need to pretend. He added that her playing dead act needed work, which surprised her. Embarrassed, Su Qingying covered her face. Realizing this was the same powerful pioneer she had been tracking, she tried to make an excuse, claiming she woke up from the smell. Fang Yi, however, wasn't fooled. He complimented her, pointing out that while her teammates were out of energy, she was strong enough to keep a small reserve to protect herself. If she had really been unconscious, he explained, she wouldn't have been able to smell anything. Flustered, Su Qingying could only offer an awkward thank you. In her mind, she was amazed. He had seen right through her. She had indeed kept a bit of spiritual energy for protection. She had no idea how he had beaten both Candle Knight and the giant serpent all by himself. Noticing her embarrassment, Fang Yi's tone softened. He told her she didn't need to cover her eyes and that he only asked her to be honest with him and keep his identity secret. Seeing she and her team were safe, he said it was getting late and he would be leaving. Su Qingying tried to call out to him, but it was too late. Saying that explaining things would spoil the surprise, he jumped effortlessly through the hole he had made in the factory ceiling and disappeared into the night. As he traveled across the rooftops, Fang Yi thought about the battle. He was glad Su Qingying hadn't tried to absorb the dark power from the monsters, remembering its disgusting coldness. He wondered why he couldn't absorb it himself. He guessed maybe the dark energy was already gone, or his body had instinctively rejected it. He decided to think about it later, at home. Left alone in the huge, abandoned factory, Su Qingying looked up at the moonlit hole in the ceiling where Fang Yi had disappeared. She sighed, disappointed that she hadn't gotten a good look at his face, and realizing he still didn't trust her, or the association. Her quiet moment was short. Acting like a squad leader again, she walked over to the unconscious captain of the destroyer squad and gave him a few slaps, telling him to wake up. The man groaned and slowly opened his eyes, bruised and confused. His first thought was panic, and he shot up, shouting that they had been ambushed. Su Qingying just watched him with a calm look. The leader and his squad members then saw why she was so calm, the massive, smoking skeleton of the giant serpent. They stared in total disbelief, confused by the scene. The leader demanded to know what happened and where the powerful yang energy came from. Su Qingying calmly explained that a powerful pioneer had rescued them. She continued her carefully planned report, explaining that the pioneer was likely the person from her original mission, a very high-level individual with a yang attribute. She let her voice trail off, suggesting his appearance was a lucky coincidence. The other squad members were in complete awe, with one saying it was unbelievable that one person could defeat both monsters. Su Qingying added that she hadn't managed to recruit him yet, and that he had even managed to track her back, which only made him more mysterious. Getting back to their grim job, the destroyer squad leader asked where Candle Knight's body was. As he began using a green energy technique to clean the scene, he said they needed to collect the remains for the association. As the squads began the cleanup, the destroyer squad's leader used a green orb of energy to gather the strange, dark remains left from the battle. As he stepped forward, he accidentally crushed a piece of debris on the floor, which suddenly exploded in a blast of bright blue electrical energy. He jumped back in pain, yelling at the force of the shock as Su Qingying looked on in surprise. This new discovery only made things more mysterious. The remains, which they now realized belonged to Candle Knight, were crackling with leftover electricity. The squad leader turned to Su Qingying, questioning her report. He reminded her she had said the pioneer had a yang attribute, yet this incredibly strong electrical power told a different story. The two leaders knelt to look at the electrically charged body. Su Qingying was stunned by the pure strength of the thunder power left behind, confirming it was a high-tier power. This led the destroyer squad's leader to a new idea. Maybe two high-level pioneers had appeared, one to kill the serpent and another to kill Candle Knight, before leaving together. Su Qingying knew that wasn't right. She struggled with how to explain the unbelievable truth, remembering the image of the lone pioneer holding both crackling blue lightning and roaring golden fire. She knew no one would believe that a single person could have two different top-level powers. Having just one made you a genius. Having two was almost unheard of. The impossible proof was right in front of them. The burning skeleton of the giant serpent was the work of a Yang Flame Walker, while the electrified body of Candle Knight was the clear mark of a Thunder Tyrant. The combined squads could only look on in complete disbelief, wondering what kind of monster this mysterious pioneer really was. As reinforcements from the association arrived, Su Qingying was glad she had left team members outside. If she had been inside too long without checking in, they would have reported her missing. She grimly realized the rescue team now at the scene had originally been sent to collect their bodies. Her two subordinates, who were knocked out by the serpent's poison, finally woke up. They scrambled to her side, crying with relief that their captain was still alive. With the threat gone, the association's team began their work. Their job had changed from a rescue to a forensic investigation. Using advanced scanning tech, they carefully analyzed the leftover spiritual energy and the battle signs, trying to piece together what happened for their report back to headquarters. Soon, one of the specialists approached Su Qingying and the destroyer squad's leader with his findings. He reported that after comparing all the data, from fighting habits to the way both monsters were killed, there was a 99% probability that one person was responsible for killing both of them. The two squad leaders stared at each other, their faces showing both shock and serious concern. The other squad members murmured to each other in disbelief. They were processing the fact that they had been saved by a pioneer with two different high-tier powers, something they never thought was possible. They knew either monster could have easily killed them all, yet this powerhouse had finished them both off, seeming to use single strikes. The power difference between them and this mysterious person was just ridiculous. Understanding the huge importance of this discovery, Su Qingying contacted her superior. She reported that the information on her target had been significantly updated. Looking up at the hole in the ceiling, she confirmed that the mysterious pioneer from the university and the powerful individual codenamed Tyrant were, in fact, the same person. Back in his office, the association superior listened calmly to her report. After thinking about the information, he gave a new command, telling Xiao Su to pause her mission for now. He explained that the pioneer had saved her team, killed the monsters, and secured the area. These were not the actions of an enemy. He added that he and Old Han, Major Han Li, didn't agree on the matter, and for her own safety and to avoid leaving a bad impression on their powerful potential ally, she was to stop all contact with the tyrant for the time being. While on the phone with her boss, Su Qingying, though she had agreed to pause her mission, couldn't help but add one more piece of information. She told him she had one more theory, based on what happened when she had tracked Tyrant to the back mountain where he was advancing his power. Her boss, interested, asked her to explain. She explained that during that encounter, she had sensed an incredibly strong aura where he was active. At the time, she suspected he might have a spiritual weapon but thought it was unlikely. However, now that it was confirmed he had two high-tier powers, the possibility seemed much more real. The association superior was surprised by this new information, questioning if the pioneer really had a spiritual weapon. He quickly became skeptical, leaning back and saying it was highly unlikely. He argued that no matter how talented, a solo pioneer couldn't possibly have such a rare item without outside help. Furthermore, he added, the team had found no traces of a third spiritual energy, which would usually come from a separately made spiritual weapon. Su Qingying quickly corrected him, clarifying an important detail. The spiritual weapon aura she had sensed during her first encounter with him was clearly a Yang attribute. This new information completely changed things. The superior's eyes widened as he understood what this meant. If the weapon's attribute came directly from the user's own Yang energy, it meant he wasn't just using a weapon, he was creating it. This led to an amazing conclusion. If he could create his own spiritual weapons, then he had to be a spirit creation realm cultivator. Such a being could theoretically do this alone, but that level of power was almost mythical. Su Qingying was floored by this idea, knowing that cultivators at that level were extremely rare, with barely more than 2 in the entire world. The superior then thought of an even more terrifying possibility. If this person did have a third, separate attribute, it would shift the balance of power and shake the entire pioneer community. He explained that according to all known research, Different attributes clash inside the human body, making it nearly impossible for them to exist together. So far, no pioneer had ever been confirmed to have 3 different spiritual attributes. Therefore, if the pioneer truly had a spiritual weapon, the fact that they didn't detect a 3rd energy signature from it might actually be a good thing. As the call ended, the superior was left with a single worrying thought. He could only hope that such a powerful pioneer would never become an enemy of humanity. Back at his apartment, Fang Yi stood thoughtfully under a hot shower, washing away the dirt and tiredness from his recent battle. As he dried off, he thought about the current state of the world. He knew there was less than a year until the official spiritual energy revival, but dangerous monsters and strange events were already happening more and more often. He used his yang attribute to easily dry his clothes, his hand glowing with golden energy as he thought about how many pioneers, like himself, had already started cultivating on their own. He thought back to the aggressive men he had met at the lava river, realizing that once the connection between the body and the spiritual world was opened, people naturally became more sensitive to the world's changes. He recognized that even without the country's official approval, many self-trained pioneers had already reached the 1-star Ghost Axe realm. The fact that the government, through agents like Su Qingying, was now reaching out to wild pioneers like him showed that both sides were in a relatively peaceful phase of mutual exploration. Standing in his room, thinking about Major Han Li and Su Qingying, he concluded that for now, the monsters were still under control, and there was no serious conflict yet among the different pioneer groups. However, as he finished getting dressed, he knew this peace was fragile. The government had already created the Spiritual Energy Cultivation Association, but it still hadn't told the public about it. He understood their strategy perfectly. While people were talking more about local problems and strange events, the government was walking a fine line, trying to both protect humanity and give subtle early warnings without causing mass panic. Despite his recent victories, Fang Yi's analysis of the world situation was still grim. He knew the problem was the government's lack of confidence to officially start a full-scale cultivation era. With such a huge population, he understood that once the full truth was revealed, society would likely collapse into chaos and death. In the current state, even official pioneers couldn't stop the inevitable chaos, and the mix of internal problems and external threats from monsters would only make things worse. He admitted that the government's gentle, careful approach wasn't wrong, knowing that human fear and panic could be more destructive than any monster. However, what truly worried him was how fast the monsters were developing, which was far exceeding his expectations. He reviewed the information on the creatures he had just fought. They were a typical product of dark attribute contamination, specifically the shadow attribute, a sub-branch of dark energy that his system identified as a natural enemy to pioneers, and currently something he couldn't absorb. He realized these monsters were far smarter than typical beasts, working together to trap and kill pioneers, whom they saw as a good food source. He knew, however, that these creatures were still much weaker than the true dark-type monsters he remembered from his previous life. Monsters that could destroy entire countries on their own. Still, the close call was a serious reminder of the growing danger. He was certain that if he hadn't been there, Su Qingying and her entire squad would have been wiped out. A bit of hope sparked inside him as he thought about the system's wording. The fact that the dark attribute was only temporarily unabsorbable suggested that once certain conditions were met, he might be able to use its power himself, a possibility that could be key to winning in the future. He reviewed his current abilities. He now possessed the Golden Sun breathing technique of the Yang attribute, the Divine Thunder tempering of the Thunder attribute, and the Crimson Flame blade technique. With these perfectly suited, high-tier techniques and his current strength as a 3-star Ghost Axe realm pioneer, he knew very few could match him. Yet, as he stood surrounded by his own great power, he knew with absolute certainty that it was still not enough. His thoughts were suddenly interrupted by his phone ringing. He picked it up, surprised to see a call from his auntie. On the other end of the line, his aunt asked about his health before explaining the real reason for her call. She told him that his cousin was coming to study in the city and, worried for her safety, asked if she could stay at his place for a few days instead of a hotel. Fang Yi was taken aback, his memory of his cousin extremely fuzzy. All he could recall was a quiet, straight-A student who was obsessed with her studies. He couldn't even remember what she looked like. Despite this, he agreed, telling his aunt that there was a spare room. When he asked when she would be arriving, his aunt simply replied that she would give the cousin his address and let her come over by herself. Elsewhere, in a dark room lit only by a computer monitor, a person with long, almost claw-like fingers typed quickly on a keyboard. The person, wearing a big hoodie with bare ears, was finishing a phone call with her mother. Her mother, who was Fang Yi's aunt, told her that she should arrive at her cousin's place by tomorrow afternoon and that she would bring some specialty snacks. The person politely ended the call, saying it was no trouble and that she had something else to do. On her screen was a chat window for a group called Spiritual Energy Revival, Martial Arts Vanguard Team. The user, Feng Heiju, had just announced her arrival in the city and her plans to stay at her cousin's place. After ending the call, she clicked her mouse, pulling up a new window. It was a rumor alert about an internet-famous town, now nicknamed Death Town, where 3 more people had vanished in relation to a pork beast challenge. A gruesome, blood-splattered image of the town was with the article. With glowing glasses reflecting the screen, Feng Heiju identified the location as Yanghuo Town. Her interest clearly sparked. Her browsing was interrupted when her mother entered the room, asking if she had finished packing. Feng Heiju told her mother that she was packed, but that she'd rather stay in a hotel than bother her cousin. Her mother insisted, saying it was much safer than staying alone and that she trusted the cousin completely. Gently pushing her daughter out the door, her mother gave her some final advice. Be sure not to cause trouble and help out around the house when she could. Feng Heiju reassured her mother that she understood. Once the door was closed, Feng Heiju let out a small sigh, preparing herself for the visit. She thought of it as just one more hurdle to overcome. Adjusting her glasses with a flash of determination, she resolved that no matter what her cousin was like, he couldn't possibly be more difficult to handle than a monster. The next day, under a bright blue sky, a young woman with long dark hair and glasses pulled a suitcase toward an apartment building. She checked her phone, confirming that the map had led her to the correct destination. Looking up at the building, she murmured to herself that this must be the place, ready to finally meet the cousin she barely remembered. As Lin Yi stood outside the apartment building, Fang Yi came out, carrying a bag. She called out, asking if he was her cousin. He stopped, surprised, and asked if she was Lin Yi to confirm, though he admitted to himself that he didn't recognize her at all. An awkward silence hung between them for a moment. Later, inside the apartment, they sat on the couch, making polite conversation. Fang Yi asked if she was in the city for a summer camp, which she confirmed. He told her to let him know if she needed anything, and she thanked him. After their brief chat, he gave her the key to her room, which was across from his, before going to his own room. As she watched him leave, she felt relieved, thinking her cousin seemed easy to get along with and wouldn't get in her business. However, Fang Yi was not clueless. From the moment she sat down, he had sensed a faint but strange spiritual aura from her. He wondered if his senses were off, or if she just wasn't good enough to hide her power. He immediately suspected that she was also a pioneer. The aura he felt was faint but clear, and he realized her story about a summer camp was probably a cover for her real reason for being in the city. Meanwhile, in her room, Lin Yi was on her phone, confirming Fang Yi's suspicions. She messaged her pioneer group, the Martial Arts Vanguard Team, saying her cousin seemed nice and wouldn't interfere. The chat turned to recent events, with members talking about the powerful pioneer at the lava river. Lin Yi warned her team to be careful, as many powerful people were still hiding. After agreeing to wait for her signal, she logged off. She decided it was best not to do any cultivation for now, worried her cousin might discover her secret. 3 days passed. Fang Yi soon found that living with his cousin was making his cultivation difficult. His meditations could be interrupted at any time, like when she came out of the bathroom wrapped only in a towel. He also worried that the bright golden aura from his breathing technique was too obvious and would be impossible to hide. But the hardest part was her overwhelming kindness. One evening, she proudly gave him a delicious-looking dinner she had made. He tried to insist on doing the dishes, but she refused, saying it was the least she could do. He found her perfect politeness and extreme cleanliness almost strange. Despite the trouble, Fang Yi decided to go along with it. He thought that by letting her be overly helpful, he might get her to let her guard down. He knew this was the only way he could find out what she was really up to. Their quiet dinner was interrupted when her phone on the table began to vibrate. Both cousins glanced at the message, their expressions surprised for a moment. Fang Yi used the chance to excuse himself, saying he would go back to his room while she chatted. His cousin could only quietly reply as he left. Left alone, she stared thoughtfully after him for a moment before turning to her phone. Sitting on her bed, she took the call, her expression turning serious. she repeated the information she was getting, confirming that the great change of heaven and earth would happen again the next day at 3 in the afternoon, and she promised she would be there. Fang Yi easily overheard his cousin's phone conversation. She agreed to meet at the entrance of Yanghuo Town. He recognized the name as an internet-famous town in the suburbs, about an hour's drive away. With his suspicions confirmed, he watched her through the wall, his own spiritual energy flaring. He was now certain his cousin was also a pioneer. He was confident, however, that with her current strength, she wouldn't be able to sense him spying. He was impressed by her power. She was still just a middle school student, but she had already reached the 2-star Ghost Axe realm and was close to another breakthrough. He wondered if her high natural talent was the reason for her somewhat strange personality. He now understood her real purpose in the city. The summer camp was just an excuse. She had learned about the coming great change of heaven and earth, and had come to be at the center of it. He knew that every one of these great changes was a chance to get a new technique to increase his own strength. He wondered what kind of power would appear this time. In the end, it didn't matter. With a determined look, he decided that whatever power appeared, he would take it for himself. In her room, his cousin suddenly paused, feeling a strange sensation. She looked around, wondering if it was just her imagination, or if someone had been watching her. Seeing nothing but the moonlit mountains outside, she dismissed the feeling and continued her preparations. The next day, the town of Yanghuo was buzzing with activity, with its mountains in the background. At the town's entrance, Lin Yiyi met a friend from her pioneer group. The friend playfully teased Yiyi about her cousin, asking if he was handsome. Yiyi replied that he was a good person, but just an ordinary-looking guy. Her friend sighed in disappointment. Just then, another woman from their group arrived, a redhead in a purple dress. She reminded the first friend that Yiyi herself had always said she was just an ordinary person. With the rest of their team there, the redhead announced it was time to get to business. One of the male members asked if a certain she was not coming. The redhead confirmed it would just be the 6 of them, adding that the missing member was always mysterious. Unknown to them, Fang Yi was watching from a nearby cafe balcony, his sword beside him. He noted that his cousin's little squad seemed to be pretty low-key. From where he was, he could sense their strength. The weakest was at the 2-star Ghost Axe level, and the man who had spoken was even a 3-star. He also overheard them say their team was usually stronger, with one powerful member often absent. As he sat watching, his attention was drawn to the mountains overlooking the town. His eyes narrowed with anticipation, sensing this was where the real event was about to happen. High in the mountains, the great change of heaven and earth finally happened. A giant green vine came down from the clouds, looking like the beanstalk from the fairy tale. This strange event would appear randomly and wasn't destructive, but for pioneers, it was an important key to understanding the changes in their world. Deep in the misty mountains, Lin Yi and her squad finally saw the incredible sight. The red-haired leader looked up in awe, confirming this was what they were looking for. The group stood in disbelief before the massive, pulsing vine. However, the awe quickly turned to fear. The group's adventurous friend suddenly grew pale and urged the others to stop, saying they shouldn't go any further. She was trembling with dread. She explained that seeing the vine in person gave her a terrible feeling. The leader then asked if they had seen the rumors on their internal pioneer forums. The friend's fear came from a dark story. She said she knew some of the pioneers from a team that had tried to touch the vine the last time it appeared. They were powerful, much stronger than she was, yet they all met a horrible end. She explained that after they came here, they were all buried, their skeletons now twisted within the roots of a dark version of the vine. Overcome with terror, she clutched her head in panic. She confessed she had a feeling they would all suffer the same fate. As she spoke, the reality around the group changed, and they were no longer on a mountain path. Instead, they were trapped inside a terrifying, pulsating, fleshy red cavern, the ground itself a gross mass of organic tendrils. The vision of their death was just a scary premonition. Back on the misty mountain path, the squad's adventurous friend, scammed in an online romance, was still shaken by the feeling of dread. She admitted that while she was originally ready to take the pioneer's risk, to either come back rich or die, the moment she saw the vine, she felt an overwhelming fear. Her gut told her this was a new, unknown, and powerful high-level monster, a mutation she couldn't handle. Tears filled her eyes as she said she wasn't ready to die here and wanted to back out. The red-haired leader and Lin Yi looked at their upset teammate with understanding. They confirmed they had all felt the same heavy feeling from the vine. Lin Yi explained it further, describing it as a feeling of complete emptiness within the wood-type vine. It was a strange feeling, as if all life had been swallowed by time, leaving only an empty shell. This, she explained, was why they all felt so scared. The group came to a scary conclusion. The vine was trying to eat their life force. Just as the fearful friend was about to panic, Lin Yi grabbed her hand, her face showing fierce determination. She declared that this was the path of the martial pioneer, a path that required them to face such dangers directly. Unseen by the group, Fang Yi watched from a nearby cliff. He, too, could sense the heavy, suffocating death energy coming from the giant vine. He noted that out of all the world monsters he had faced, besides the pure dark attribute, this vine gave him the worst feeling. He had to admit, the small squad had serious guts to even think about cultivating in such a dangerous place. He analyzed the monster more closely. While it was clearly a plant, a symbol of life, it felt completely lifeless. It wasn't really alive, but a dead thing pretending to be living, with no spiritual energy of its own. He could see it was stained with the blood and bodies of its past victims. Back with the squad, Lin Yi took charge. She stood on a cliff edge, speaking to her team with new